I wish
You have to take it back.
I take back my application. Here. Here. Yeah, that's good.
Alex, here, Derek, Colin, Sybil, Henry, Amanda.
Here.
Good job.
This is American Studies.
What? Why are you wearing shorts? It's cold.
It's not cold outside.
I do it every single day. Today was like, it was Instagram. Today was real bad. Today I fell asleep and she was calling my name. I couldn't start playing. I was still asleep. How do you fall asleep in the I just do this. So, I showed you this map.
Thing is this.
And it's a map of
Cold Bear area in the United States.
yeah, okay, all the coal. We look the key down here. See this like this speckled spot. This is lignite. If you look at the map, you see this big, massive collection of lignite up in the coldest part of the country where they're getting snow right now. And what's there now?
Abandoned coal mines.
I will tell you a story about that. I need you to take out your computers. I want you to look online and tell me what we find there now.
Abandoned coal mines. I don't know what I'm supposed to look up for this, but okay.
Lignite is one form of that. It's called what?
Lignite.
The technology to actually use lignite and extract that for fuel purposes was limited until the technology became available maybe in the last decade or so. You might want to look at the map. Yes. Use Google or something. It doesn't matter to me. I'm asking you to poke around and tell me what you find there. An Indian reservation, yes. You'll find an Indian reservation. North Dakota. The entire western end of North Dakota. You find something? Okay. That's a good start.
There's a creepy clown snake menacing children in North Dakota.
That story one there, that's true too, yes. Yeah, like, I've already given you that.
Oh, you found it in that park. It's like
Okay, let me change the scenario. You're driving by car through North Dakota. What might you want to stop and see? What? Okay, and I will tell you a story about a gas station. I actually have a story involving gas stations. The grass.
What's North Dakota? You look at the northern
Ostriches? All of you are hopeless.
Oh, you sound just like my parents.
Lincoln's there. No, Lincoln's in Springfield. Is it empty?
No, they don't.
Yes, but that's not your answer.
It's about National Park.
Oh, you found the Theodore Roosevelt National Park, and where would we find that exactly? Right here. And just north of Theodore Roosevelt National Park was Theodore Roosevelt's ranch called Elkhorn Ranch.
Was it part of his house?
It was a house. Here's the thing. He came from a family with immense wealth. He took half of his fortune, half of it.
More than George Washington?
We're not going to go there. So he took half of his fortune, bought this ranch in western North Dakota, pretty much about there. And he stocked it with something like 1,000 head of cattle. He decided that this was going to be the place where he goes and like does his outdoorsman stuff, right?
So he just like lit a bunch of.
This is Theodore.
Oh, Theodore.
This was a great plan until all of his cattle froze one winter.
Oh. Oh yeah.
He lost.
Carefully.
He lost half of
And
his
irresponsible.
He put half of his wealth into this ranch and the cattle, and then the cattle froze to death. He ended up selling the ranch to a friend of his in 1898, and he didn't go back. But it was very important for him. The actual national park is about 60 miles south of where his ranch was. So they don't. Actually, he knocked the building down, so there's nothing there. Although I guess there's some landmark over it. The actual national park is further south. You have a question?
Didn't Theodore make like a bunch of different national parks and stuff?
Okay, yeah, we're going there. Here's my question. So we know that what's there now.
How did they know that all the holes
Geologists.
Me.
The back in oil range, the one getting a lot of attention. Any of you have ever wondered how you could go get a job at McDonald's and work for more than $15 an hour? Well, that's the place to go. Willistown, North Dakota. Of course, it snows 10 months out of the year, but you know, shortage of workers. Anyway, so the back in oil range, and on top of the back in oil range sits what is now Theodore Roosevelt National Park, although I don't think they knew the oil was there at the time. So here's my task for you. What would Roosevelt think of all the digging for oil going on below, his, house that he used to have, which is over there, and the national park that now bears his name?
He owns the land.
To answer that question, we need to read some documents, and then we're going to have a conversation about what conservation was actually supposed to mean. So if you go to Moodle, I took my Moodle out for a walk this morning. Yeah, it was playing in the neighbor's
What?
yard.
Was it
What?
Moodle. So if you look at Moodle, you're going to see something that says conservation.
LLC.
We're going to use the one that says Library of Congress because it seemed like the National Park one wasn't worth it over the weekend.
the LOC?
LOC. LOC, Library of Congress. Library of Congress. LOC. I posted, there's a link to one of the Library of Congress web pages, and there are 7 documents that are only used the first 6. That's mostly because I never read the 7th one. So I'm going to give this table the letter, the first one, the letter from President Roosevelt. I'm going to give the second one, which is this report. Your table, I'm going to give Man and the Earth. You're going to have the lay of the land. You have the one on the fight for conservation, and then yours is going to be. Remind me. The one about conservation and sanitation. All of these have their merits. Tell us something about this. These are nice short documents, so we can have a discussion.
Please note that this very long document may take a while to load. Okay.
Who needs more time? Of course, you're all going to have your notebooks out. So, those of you who read, so tell us the first one. You know it's from the president, what's it about? Yes, Tommy.
Generally, like what conservation is and how the government owes it to the people. That in order to like preserve resources for the next generations, they must.
What does he think it is? You said it's what it is. What does he think it is?
Oh, he thinks like conservation is required.
Who are we conserving for?
Like the next generations.
Our posterity.
Posterity, but also this is supposed to be about who do the resources belong to?
The people.
The people. So here's this guy. He's a very active in his use of the executive office. Was never supposed to be in the first place, and he says. This belongs to the people, and that means not just now, but for all time. Like everyone should be able to enjoy these same things that I'm enjoying. Right, and this comes from the president himself in this initiative he's taking. We're going to get a report Tell us about the report.
So it talks about deforestation and the depletion of coal, iron, and like timber, and basically the misuse of land. There's something about 3 stages of
I guess caring about resources, and it says like in the first stage, like no one really cared about how much resources they were using. In the second, it was like people started to take notice, but they still weren't really careful about it. And then in the third stage, people sort of recognized that we're running out of resources really fast, and they started using them more wisely.
What is the thing that we've been seeing going on in this period of time that we've been talking about? What kinds of concerns do people have?
They're mostly concerned.
I don't mean in this document. I mean in the unit that we've been talking about.
Like work conditions.
Working conditions. What else?
Like safety convention, like buildings,
So safety. They want commissions to investigate. They're worried about food safety, fire safety. What else? Public health. And industrialization, which we found has all kinds of consequences. What kinds of consequences are they identifying?
And I was even going to ask the question, maybe like they also at the time, maybe overpopulation.
So the population is getting much bigger. What else? Okay, yes, and we're gonna. This group back here has more to say about it. I'm kind of disappointed no one said corruption. That would be the top of the list. But so corruption, and now we add also environmental aspects to their concerns. Right, the environment is changing. We didn't have time for it in this class, but if you go back about a century before this, first half of the 19th century, there's going to be this whole romantic movement in painting, where people are drawing, where they're painting landscapes, and they're kind of taking in the American landscape. Oh, look at all of the stuff that we have. A century later, they're like, oh, look at all the stuff that we're destroying. Right, and if you go to the Smithsonian or you could go to the Met, I think the Art Institute here probably might have some of these, but they have a whole collection of these paintings. You can see what it was that people were romanticizing. Roosevelt is still romanticizing it, but now he's saying, yeah, but now we have to protect it. So conservation. I gave you, which one did I give you? Who? Oh, tell us about this one.
So it was talking about how like research was in it and how and they compared like the new people so often before to people today and how they had a lot to do.
There is this kind of romanticized version of the kind of pre-European past and what that meant. It turns out some of this is just romantic, it's not totally true. But, what's the point?
It's kind of like because like as time goes on, how much more resources we are using. It has like the analogy of how at the start only 1% of the year was 1 ton of iron at right now it's 500 tons.
So there's this huge amount of consumption, and so we're consuming all of this stuff, and behind all that consumption there is this, effect on the natural world.
He also said that like the world's gonna end if like the industry was so like thinking about like if we get into the 20th century
Yeah, that there is this kind of fatalism, and we still hear this, right? I mean, climate change activists would say, look, I don't think you recognize just how dire the situation is. And by feeling the direness of the situation, you might take action. So he's saying that about, in this case, natural resources. Which one did you have? Lay of the land. Does it lay of the land remind you of this last one? The one I was just saying.
Because in here, they're like, for the first like part of it, they're like looking, they're all like, there's a group of people like all looking at the squirrel.
The squirrel. Was it the same squirrel, the one that ran across the whole country just in
Yeah,
trees?
his name is Billy.
His name is Billy.
It says Billy the
So tell us about Billy.
I think, what like Dallas, you know, there's lots of Shepherd saying that he's like, you should like conserve nature, like we're called nature because like no one is in culture, like there's like just natural outdoors and stuff. So like, it's like in our nature, or like in our like, American nature, study nature and stuff. That's what I should consider. It also says that like, the documentary says that the people like, I think they're referring to like the people who were like whatever, they were like, they're coming was the real beginning of our nature. They're observing the development into our nature now.
Okay, so this one is a lot like the last one. This is more promotion. And we're going to see that there's another one. I'm sorry for these two groups. While these are famous, they're not nearly as famous as this one. Who was your writer?
He was writing about how like teachers in no ways you have to be patriotic. He was talking about patriotism, and he's saying how women doesn't instill more stuff, and it needs to instill patriotism into the young children. Like it needs to start at a young age.
You keep saying he, who?
I don't know. I told you that.
Gifford Pinchot. Pinchot. It would probably be in French Pinchot, but Pinchot. Who was he?
He was the chief of the Federal Force Division.
So Roosevelt actually picks him to actually be in charge of the I guess the force service now. Yes, we have the U.S. Force Service. So he's incredibly famous for his role, and you tapped into something. He's talking about patriotism, and what else? Women. Let's think back a minute. Do you remember when we were looking at the American Revolution documents, and one of them was by Dr. Benjamin Rush, and he was writing about the education of women?
Yeah.
Yeah, what was the context for that document? That was the module about the American Revolution. And we saw like Alexander Hamilton talking about, poor people shouldn't vote, but slaves should fight the people. This is an important question because it's a theme we've seen before, and we could do a whole class just on this topic. What? No, you're thinking of, well, that was actually John Adams and his exchange with his wife, and then there's the exchange that Adams has with his friend Sullivan. This is the one where Benjamin Rush is talking about why girls should be educated.
Is it because, like, when they become mothers, then they have to
Yeah, they have to educate the children, and the Republic depends on them. What's really interesting here is that we have this guy who's in the Roosevelt administration, who's making a similar case, but it's not about the fate of the Republic. It's about, well, your patriotic duty to do what? Instill proper conservationist values in the children. Right, so things have changed over 130 years. Now we have women doing their patriotic duty to instill these values in children, right? It's quite interesting. I mean, and there's this kind of gender component in the education of the youth, and again, patriotism, but it's not about the Republic, it's about the natural world. I find this document fascinating for that. And then going back to a comment that somebody made earlier, tell us about this one about sanitation.
Basically, they was talking about how we don't need chemical air to So like a lot of bad things can be done, even though we don't take
So now this document is perhaps well, Pinchot is important. This one it probably has the longest history out of all of the documents, because this one ties into discussions about clean air and clean water. The early Clean Air and Clean Water Acts are like from the 1930s. They're revised finally in the 1970s, and then they haven't been really revised much since then. It's mostly been kind of executive branch kind of initiative with EPA and so on. But this document kind of anticipates these larger concerns. You know the story of the Chicago River. Hold on. Tell me about the story of the Chicago River.
Well, didn't they switch the flow because like they were pouring a bunch of like bad stuff into it, and then it was going to Lake Michigan?
So all of the waste from the whole city was flowing into Lake Michigan, which would be fine, except that everyone's drinking the water coming out of Lake Michigan. And so there was a constant problem of well, pretty much everything, including typhus. And there were constantly these illnesses. And they decided the best solution to the problem is that rather than having everyone drink out of Lake Michigan and having the waste go there, they'll build a lock system, reverse the flow of the river, and make it the problem of St. Louis. And it's true. Now the problem is St. Louis and not Chicago's anymore. And so these kinds of issues, they needed to be addressed. You needed to do something. Now, that was a kind of primitive solution. Oh, we'll just make the river go the other way. It was a major public works project.
Flips it again.
Just flip it again. Well, there has been discussion about reversing taking out the locks. We don't need them anymore. The only problem with that is the Asian carp. Which is a totally, yes, invasive species, totally different situation. And it's only because of the lock system that the carp have been actually kept at bay. Not that Lake Michigan hasn't already been polluted with other invasive species.
The aquarium, sometimes we Lake Michigan, most likely survive longer.
Really? Why does it somehow seem like a really stupid idea to be releasing sharks?
Because sharks are saltwater fish and they're freshwater, so they know they're just going to die. But now they're surviving.
There are freshwater sharks. They live in Lake Managua in Nicaragua.
Well, there's going to be some like Michigan.
In the city of Chicago will tell you, if the bacteria don't kill you, the sharks will. It's true, they're closing the beaches in the summer all the time for bacteria. They're making way too much.
Yeah, you can't swim in Lake Springfield anymore. They closed that.
Now, okay,
Yeah.
this discussion, which may seem like yet another digression, for once, actually keeps us on topic.
Conservation.
Because it puts us right back into the concerns that these people had. They're like, gee, would it be a good idea to be dumping, I don't know, sharks into Lake Michigan? Probably not, especially if they're living longer and longer. Would it be a good idea to be dumping all of our waste into the water? Probably not. Now, granted, what's that?
Only 350, right? So they can't go anywhere.
It's a little more of a problem when you have the smaller areas. Stop the flow. Because the state's not flat enough already, we should just excavate the whole thing. So the water doesn't go anywhere.
We have flat states. Are you serious? My house on the hill.
The whole state is like somewhere between 900 and 600 feet above sea level.
No. The whole state is
300 feet.
The state is about as high as the corn is. Like the state gets taller and taller each year. It's chopped down.
I forgot how to read it.
Corn goes out and then
The corn? The corn.
where the starting of the
Well, let me get back to my original question. So, what do you think Roosevelt would think about all of the oil that's being removed from underneath the national park?
He would die a second time.
Oh, what?
He would
die a second time.
I would be okay with it, 'cause, like in the first documentary, he was like, the land was spread to people not only like now, but the second time.
So you think he'd be okay with the drilling?
Oh wait, no.
He would not be okay with
No.
the drilling. Okay.
Yeah, I would say it's not gonna be okay with it. So it's like for the future too, if you just drill it up all now, then how about the future?
Who had the document that mentions preservation? It's right there in like the first paragraph of the document, of your document. One of the writers says something about, you know, it's gone from conservation into the realm of preservation.
What about breathability?
No, you're thinking of your future. Sometimes it just comes out. It's like.
Josh, why don't you tell me?
Sorry, it's like, you know, the two cowboys meeting in the street, and I'm just. Somebody had a document mentions preservation. This is an important point because there is a difference, and it was understood at this time that there was a difference between conservation and preservation. What do you suppose might be the difference between one and the other?
One's together and one's.
No, one's not a pro and one's not a pro.
No, wait, one's together, one's.
Well, you could say one is pre-preservation.
Conservation is before you actually. What's the origin? It's to
I feel like
conserve.
conserving it is to use a little bit, and then preserving it is don't use it at all.
Why do you say that?
Because when you want to conserve water, you still take showers, but when you preserve water, you
Oh, okay. That's really
No.
It turns out your answer is correct. I thought your reasoning might help you on the SAT, but apparently not. What's that? What her answer is perfectly correct. There's this idea that there's the conservation is yes means that you're trying to keep it in its natural state, or at least, but it doesn't say it should be untouched. Preservation is leaving it exactly how it is. And I mean, you're correct. And they understood at the time that there's a difference between the conservation movement and, say, a preservation movement. And the preservationists were far more radical. Roosevelt's a conservationist. But would we be testing the limits of his ideas of conservation once it comes time to drill for oil in that area? That's the big question. Let me tell you, you were making jokes about gas stations and like being in the middle of nowhere earlier. So let me tell you a story. So, Sharks? No, this doesn't involve sharks. Sharks, what? Gas stations?
Gas station bathrooms are my favorite
Anyways, my comeback was just so incredibly disgusting. I decided not to say it.
Alright, so gas station.
No, no. Well, yes, gas stations, but not gas stations. So, in that area, in between the, say, it's not Lewistown, it's called,
Lewis City.
no, Lewistown is in, Williston. Lewistown is in Montana, okay? And you go from Great Falls to Lewiston, it's about 4.5 hours, okay? You don't pass a single gas station. And actually in the right time of day, you might pass only a single car that entire length of road. If you do it on Sunday, I guarantee you can go 4.5 hours and you might not actually see another person. Which is why I told you, Montana's perfect. If you hate people, that is the place for you. I'm telling you, it's the danger is you drive 4.5 hours, you're like, gas is kind of running out, where's the next gas station? And then, like, there it is. The only one. The only one in Lewiston, Montana. So you used to have this great distance, and this is on Route 89. Route 89 also has a whole stretch that didn't have a speed limit for a time, because the federal government dropped its speed limit requirements. No speed limit. And then all the out-of-staters were like, the Autobahn! And they were crashing their cars. And so anyway, so Route 89. Route 89 continues. It goes through this area where the FBI had a standoff with Freeman, this kind of crazy militia group, some years ago.
They like camped in that little like cabin thing.
It's in Jordan. If any of you are interested in like paleontology, Jordan, Montana is actually a really fascinating place. It's where Sue the dinosaur was found. I mean, it was like right there. They were actually they were planning to turn it into. They're actually going to build a museum, which would be great, at least for 12 people to be employed. But anyway, if you go a little bit further, you end up in this other place I was telling you about. Is in North Dakota, and that is now the center of all of this drilling. It's probably 100 miles north of the national park that we've been talking about. It also was incredibly remote, but now because of the oil, there's all this activity. People are driving their cars. My guess is there's more than one gas station now between Great Falls and Lewiston. They're incredibly high-paying jobs at the local McDonald's because there's a shortage of labor. Some years ago, I actually had a number of Amstud students say, I think I'm going to do a gap year. That would be awesome. It's not the reason I brought it up. I don't necessarily think it's a good idea. It's 95% like male, the local population, because they're all involved in like trucking jobs and like labor jobs or filling McDonald's orders and so on. And when you're in a 95% male environment, and if you're a woman, you may think, wow, lots of men. But it turns out it's a little bit dodgy, and there's not enough housing, and people are living in like trailers and stuff like this.
I mean, they're truckers.
What's that?
I mean, they're truckers.
Well, not all of them are truckers, but some of them are.
Live my life on 4 wheels.
16.
18. 2 of them flew out because the roads aren't very good. It really is remote, but it's not as remote as it used to be, which means even Roosevelt's idea of going out into this kind of romantic wilderness, which is what he thought he was doing, and even the fact, think about it, 1,000 of his cattle free. That's still like the natural space, right? Like you like the natural world. Unfortunately, it comes with the consequences that sometimes the winters are cold and the cattle die.
His meat was
There you go. He could ship it. It's already in frozen form.
exactly.
Yeah.
Wait, what was that uprising that you talked about? One that you mentioned, the Freedmen.
Oh, the Freedmen.
Yeah, what was that?
Okay, we will be digressing, but that's okay because my morning class only went for 30 minutes because I had a meeting with the people, like the woman who was sitting there reading observations. That was fun. You asked us really good questions.
What did you say about
I told her when she came, she keep an eye on you.
I thought it was.
So, the Freemen, well, you know how I'm always making fun of Montanans. The Freemen are like, they're the joke that keeps on, like, they're the reason Montana gives me so much, so many things I can talk about. They came up with an ideology. They're ostensibly anarchists. They don't call themselves that. And they think the federal government should exist. They're very nationalistic in the Montana sense, right? They're like, you know, nobody should bother us. They're more Lockean. They're kind of like what happens when you read John Locke and like we don't really understand it. And they're like, we want a society where everyone just leaves us alone. We can do whatever we want. So we do not recognize the laws of the federal government, right? It was great up until the point where they decided that as much as they do not recognize the laws of the federal government, that it's okay for them to create fake banking accounts. And the result was, I mean, this movement was pretty big. Some of their people actually won like mayor positions and like city council positions in local towns. And then they started like, they tried to create this economy where they were basically stealing from the federal government, creating fake accounts, and then spending the money and mostly spending it on weapons to defend themselves against the feds who were going to come after them. And what happened to that movement was basically they all ended up arrested and in jail. And then their defense, when they went to court, well, the defense was the federal government is not legitimate, therefore you can't prosecute. For the record, it turns out the federal government doesn't care.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that argument will not carry any weight in a political. No, not even a little bit. And so that movement, as far as I know, managed. Of course, it may still be wrong, but
What if I found a citizen?
that's a different category. So there was and Montana is full of militia. There was another one outside of Missoula. If any of you ever had a chance, like you can do like an exchange program where you can go to the University of Montana.
Oh yeah,
It's a great little it's a great little campus. University of Montana, you'll find out though, is like the left-wing bastion of the state. Outside of Missoula, in the next county over that borders Idaho, there was another militia movement there. They were trying to get the local sheriff to join them.
How'd that go?
Not so well.
Did they use Pepsi?
And again, there was this kind of, well, in their case it was, do you know this guy, Richard Spencer? Richard Spencer is the head of the white supremacists, the white nationalists in the United States. He's from Whitefish, Montana, which is actually right next to Richmond. He's been going on like the tour circuit and everything. These people down in southern Montana were basically, they probably knew him. They're not close enough to him, but they were going to resist the election of a black president at all costs. And so they put together a militia that was white supremacists. They tried to get the local sheriff to join them. He wouldn't do it. And so that state is just filled with wackos. It's quite incredible. The cities are actually, you meet perfectly decent people like Great Falls. It's kind of a in some ways, but plenty of nice people in it. But as soon as you get into like the rural parts, yeah, you start meeting, you run into the people who are living there because they don't want to interact with other human beings.
David, you should wear genie pants.
And periodically they decide to form these clubs of people carrying around, heavy weaponry.
What's wrong with heavy weapons?
It's a question of how you're intending to use the heavy weapon.
What if you just like heavy weapons?
Oh, none of these people are doing that. They tend to be carrying a heavy weaponry because they think they stand a chance of standing up to the U.S. military. It's quite aggressive.
Well, that doesn't move.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, I'm sure. Anyway, so the morning class, I went a little short because I had to leave in the morning, so I'm not going to keep you any longer. When I see you on Thursday, this conservation issue, we're going to come back to it immediately. I want to back up. Oh, here's what you need to do. Before I see you on Thursday, prompt number 3 is now in the essay number 2, your final essay. When is it due? It's going to be a couple weeks, but we're going to go like head first into the thing starting on Thursday. So make sure you look at the prompt and have an idea what I'm talking about. You will understand half of it, and the other half. No, same thing. And a reminder, because I may have mentioned this in passing, some of you are asking about it. You do have a chance to pick up extra credit to do revisions at the end of the semester. What? On any of the writing assignments. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.